I don't know if you've noticed, but diversity, equity, and inclusion is under attack in our country. And a lot of Christian pastors are celebrating this. This has been a goal of the founders of the moral majority, what has eventually become the Christian right since its founding. Something that we forget because they've become such huge champions of anti-abortion is that they started off promoting segregation. They were concerned that the passing of civil rights were going to cause their schools to desegregate. And wouldn't you know it, they saw that as a wicked thing. Now, there are issues with the way that DEI has been handled in various organizations and various administrations. I won't say that everybody who says, hey, we need to do DEI training, have always done so correctly. Sometimes they've been handled very clumsily. Sometimes they've been nothing more than just checking a box. So I want to grant that. But I do want us to be attentive to something, and that is there is nothing unchristian about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The results of passing this, of permitting this new executive priority of dismantling those things are fiercely unchristian. Now, I want to address some of this before I get into our passage, because it hits us on a very personal level, whether you know it or not. This focus on dismantling DEI over the weekend resulted in the mayor issuing an executive order that he's going to have every program reword all of the things they're doing so that they can pass the federal muster and continue receiving funds from the federal level. Seattle's response was to sue the administration. Our city's response was to capitulate. I will point out, this does not mean that they're trying to undo those things, but I will be interested to see how far the rewording goes. We've already seen the ripple effects at the county level as various agencies and programs have been either eliminated or severely cut, such as our partners with Cultivate Initiatives, who come here every single Wednesday. They bring a shower and laundry truck with them. They bring staff with them. They also have transitional housing and villages that they manage. And now, several of the folks that Erica and I and Clay and many of you, Cecilia, Elizabeth, they're now in the precarious housing situations that they were working so hard, some of them for years, to alleviate. Savalti. I interviewed Tim Logan of Savalti right here just a couple of months ago. Savalti works with BIPOC people in Portland to help them overcome obstacles that are in their way for many of them, whether it be because of institutionalization or legal status, or just some of the obstacles that they may have to encounter being in one of the whitest cities in the whole country. They are now on the chopping block. Our friend Tim and Savalti are now affected. This affects all of us. Our partners, our church, our friends. For many of us, our families. And we have Christian leaders celebrating this. They claim DEI is this great big evil. Boy, I kind of wish they knew their Bibles. This story that was just read is a story of DEI. And I'm going to get into it a bit. Okay? The problem that we have in the book of Acts comes from actually a really beautiful opportunity for the church. They have been growing. They are no longer just a few dozen people. They are in the thousands. And one of the things that they've been doing since day one of being the church is pooling their resources together. Those who have more material wealth have sold their belongings so that those who have trouble eating, have trouble finding shelter, are provided for. There's this expression, they come and they put their proceeds at the feet of the apostles. I don't recommend this for your offerings. Don't come and present them at my feet. It'll be very weird for all of us, you know. We do have a QR code you can scan. There's a box back there. There's also many of our partners who we get to work with who are even more directly involved in work that intersects with what the apostles are doing, right? Sharing these resources. Now, this is a beautiful practice, but it's already presented a few issues in the life of the church that we've seen, such as the very weird story of Ananias and Sapphira, where you have some people virtue signaling that they're more generous than they really are, and then they are smited dead. Weird. Interesting, but weird. One of the other issues that we have now is that we are seeing some of the exposed edges of the biases and preferences at work amongst the apostles. Okay? So, in our text, we are told that we have Hellenists complaining about the Hebrews. And you may be wondering, who on earth are these people? Who are the Hellenists and who are the Hebrews? I thought we were talking about Christians in the early church. Well, the Hellenists are Greek-speaking Jewish folks, in this text, Christians, who happen to come from Greek-speaking parts of the world, really other parts of the Roman Empire. And the Hebrews are Aramaic-speaking Jewish Christians from Palestine. Now, if you speak Greek and not Aramaic in most places of the Roman world, you're going to be fine. But the common language of the Palestine area is Aramaic, not Greek. And so to this church centered in Jerusalem, one of the issues we're facing is that the Greek-speaking community are not receiving the full material support that the other folks are. They don't speak the language, and they're experiencing neglect, particularly their widows. Those who rise up in complaint in our text are not being obnoxious, jerks. They're saying our most vulnerable people are suffering. They're in danger. Sometimes we have to go in our time machines and remember widows in this time period and in this place in the world were not provided for. To be a widow was to be the most marginalized of marginalized, unless you were left considerable community support. And that's where the church has stepped in. They want to be that community support for the widows. And if they're not doing it, well, nobody else is going to do it. So, you have the Greek speakers, the Hellenists, they complain to the Hebrews. In this situation, they're specifically complaining about 12 individuals, the apostles, because they're the ones in charge of this. Now, what else are the apostles in charge of? Well, they're in charge of creating this community, keeping it going. They're in charge of preaching and protesting and teaching, and having this community centered around the teachings of Christ. That's a lot. That's a lot for these 12 people to do. Add on top of that, none of them are primarily Greek speakers. Most of them probably don't speak Greek at all. Not to say all of them, just most of them. And so they called together the whole church community. Now, I find this informative. They could have said, hey, listen, you guys, you're lucky you get anything at all. Why are you complaining? Maybe if you spoke Aramaic, you wouldn't have this problem. Instead, they say we need to get the whole church together, and we need to address this issue. And they present it to the church. They say, we're doing too much. We want to serve the word, that's how they put it, instead of serving food. Luke loves wordplay, you know. Luke would enjoy a good dad joke. And when they call together the whole church, they're addressing everybody. They present this possible solution to them. They say, we think what we need to do is get some table waiters. We need to get some people to wait on tables. Now, they're not talking about like restaurant waiters. Restaurant culture is not really a thing right now, especially not for these folks. What they're talking about are servants who serve food. It's where we get the word deacon from. So if you ever grew up or were in a tradition where you had deacons, that literally means table waiter. You know, a table food server. That's what that means. So they're saying we need some deacons, some people who are just in charge of food distribution. The community is called upon to find some people who are wise, they're critical thinkers, they're problem solvers, who are attentive to the Spirit of God, and male. It's not perfect. And once you know it, the church rises to the occasion. They pick 7 individuals. This is the first time we have a position open up besides the apostles in the early life of the church. Every single one of them happen to have Greek names, which means they're from the Hellenist group. They are from the group that has been marginalized in this situation. They're from the group most directly impacted by this whole problem. The apostles have blind spots. They have biases, they have preferences, and the church's response was not to say, hey, that's fine. In fact, they're blessed in their biases and their preferences. No, the church's response is, why don't we pick some leaders who are much less likely to share those blind spots and preferences? Folks who are going to be impacted by inequity so that we have more equity. This is a diversity, equity, and inclusion issue. And so the response, appropriately enough, is one of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not the first time, or well, it is the first time, but it's not the only time we're going to see issues relating to DEI adjacent things in the book of Acts. The book of Acts is filled with it, saturated with it, because the church is doing a new thing. It's growing in the various cultures represented within it, and they have to figure out how to do life together, just like we have to figure out how to do life together. As a society, but even just as a church. Now, the apostles did not have a priority placed on exclusion. They keep inviting people to the table. It sure seems that they have a priority on invitation for everyone, but that doesn't mean they didn't have biases. And I think that should speak to us, because we also have biases and preferences. Here we are in one of the most diverse places in the whole state, in one of the most diverse neighborhoods, and I mean that in all of the different ways we think of diversity. Neurodivergence, income, ethnic, racial, immigration status, all of the things. But we all have our own backpacks on. We all bring our own assumptions, right? We all interact with the world in our own ways. And this text invites us, I think, to not be defensive about those things, but rather to be reproachable. If the apostles can be confronted with inequity in their community, inequity that they are responsible for, and find a solution by including the diverse population within it, we also ought to be reproachable. If the apostles can grow, and if the church can grow in their understanding, we too can be reproachable and grow in our understandings. I see us doing this work. And at my last church, somebody asked me, like, well, when will it be enough? I don't think it will ever be enough. But I think they asked because it's tiring work. It's tiring work to keep growing, to keep learning, to keep adapting to the needed changes around us. And now we have this curveball being thrown, not over the plate, but like right past us, of an antagonistic federal administration dismantling these things. That puts even more onus on us to be the people who really do seek and live into the world that God desires. We can't expect the government to do it for us. If there's inequity in our neighborhood, we can't expect Portland to fix it right now. We can't expect Multnomah County to fix it, or the state of Oregon to fix it, or the federal government to fix it. But it is an opportunity for us to stand up, to do what we can, to keep partnering with Cultivate Initiatives and We Shine and the other people that we are blessed to be able to share this neighborhood with, to keep learning and growing. One last thing. My father-in-law shared a story with me last week. He's Honduran American. His name's Lauren, because if I keep saying father-in-law, my mouth's gonna run dry, you know? And then I'll just be that guy with like the sticky voice. I hate that. So Lauren grew up in a small town in Honduras called Trujillo. Trujillo was one of the first access points that conquistadors came into Central America through. And in this little tiny small town, his church had a relationship with a bunch of churches in America. And he shares this story with a smile on his face. He tells me, these churches, Giuseppe, they were so generous. They were so thoughtful. They heard of our churches in Central America and the Honduras church right there on the Caribbean coast and how hot it gets. And you know what they did? They raised thousands of dollars for us. And they sent these huge fans over, these big black fans. And when they landed, I just played with the propellers before they put guards on fans, so I got to play with the other kids and we spun the propellers around. It was amazing. They were beautiful. There's just one problem. There's no electricity. These well-intentioned folks heard of a problem, but they didn't include the affected people in creating a solution. They thought, let's just send them huge fans. That's kind of the situation I think we often find ourselves in. You know, we think of a problem, we see it out in our world around us, and if we happen to not be part of that particular group, we often come up with tone-deaf solutions. I mean, we laugh at this story because it sounds like so many other stories we've heard, doesn't it? This didn't just happen in Honduras. It didn't just happen to Lauren. It just keeps happening, even now. So, my prayer, my hope for us, is that as we continue to navigate how we operate into being the beloved community today and tomorrow and in the years to come, that we practice curiosity, that we listen to one another, that we learn and we grow, and we find solutions together with our neighbors instead of for our neighbors. Because otherwise, we're going to just have a bunch of useless fans lying around.